Welcome to the thisAbility Adventures podcast. I'm Andrea Anderson.
And I'm Chip Dodd from Team thisAbility.
All right, I'm Andrea Anderson, and I am here with the team. That's Chip Dodd, David Grabiner, and Caitlin Thorn for this race. They did the Rev 3 50-hour New River Rush that was put on by Rev 3. I just said that, didn't I? But we also have a special guest, Doug Silk from AR Dot Watch, who is also there in person. So we're going to tag team this interview here, and hopefully we get to some good information. This race was an ARWS North America Series race and also USARA race. And from my perspective, it looked like a blast, especially with the way it started. So the race itself was in the New River Gorge. That's about 6 hours away from our home base in Virginia Beach, in the mountains in the gorge. Beautiful place. And I want to know first what brought the team together. So Chip, how did this team form?
It's kind of a long story. Dave and I and we did the National Solo Championships, and that's kind of where we met and started chatting a little bit. After just doing the best I possibly could, I look over my shoulder and just on my heels, Dave crosses the finish line. And then somehow we got to talking, and he mentioned that maybe we should team up to do Alaska. I think it's how it started. And I'm like, oh yeah, we're missing somebody on Alaska. You want to do Alaska? You already signed up. Okay, this is cool. We know you're fast because you would have beat me if I stopped for 5 minutes to pee. And then we started talking. You're like, yeah, maybe Ecuador as well, and yada yada. So this race, I think David, you actually reached out to us saying this would be a great shakedown to get the team together to do Alaska. So this would be our one big race where all four of us could do it. And then Andrea, you have an overachieving daughter, which is a total bummer because she couldn't do this race. So we just did it as the three of us and just assumed that you would keep up. Yeah.
Yeah, so I really hated that I couldn't do this race. It would have been the perfect opportunity for the full Alaska team to be together. But yeah, I had to be at a band banquet, which was worth going to. It was really special. Very last one for my daughter. So anyway, that aside, David, you're the first time racing as Team thisAbility with Caitlin and Chip. What was it like racing for the first time with them?
Well, for me, it's like a dream come true. It's like you watch these people racing on TV, well, YouTube, whatever, same thing, and see the race rambles. So to be on a team that I felt like I already knew because I've been watching so much, and I knew that they were an awesome team, and to be able to, I was a little bit concerned, like, am I going to keep up to their level? Like, am I going to fit in? Are we going to be a good team together? Because obviously a lot's riding on this. We got Alaska coming, and then Ecuador's a national or internationals together. So there was a little bit of anticipation and stress on my side. Like, okay, got to make sure that we have a good performance. But the race itself, once we got into it, oh man, it was great. It's the first time I've actually really been on a competent team where I didn't have to be the leader. And which spoke great. I mean, Chip is an awesome leader. It was great to be with him. Caitlin, awesome athlete, amazing to be with her. And what I found so awesome was that sometimes I was leading the charge and I was in front. Sometimes Caitlin was in front. Sometimes Chip was in front. Sometimes I was in the back. Sometimes Caitlin was back. Like, we all had our moments when we were either pushing or we're being pulled. So it felt really good.
Yeah, that's awesome. Welcome to the team.
Thanks.
It made me think, like, I think other teams should do some videotaping of their races, because I think, we don't do much of anything special when we click on and off the GoPro, and it seems like some people watch them, and you got an idea of what the team would be like just by watching the videos. Maybe that's a good way to find teammates. To anyone out there listening, we need more adventure racing on YouTube. But yeah, Caitlin, tell me about the team roles. How was that with this configuration?
Yeah, so we had two sets of maps, and Dave and Chip tag team the navigation, which was phenomenal. They decided who would take lead for the nav on certain legs, but just like when you and Chip and me raced together, it was great having two navigators. There were several times during the race where we would, had to stop and look a little bit closer at the map, and Dave would catch something that Chip had missed, or vice versa. So that was really helpful. And it was really helpful just to have the three of us together to strategize. There was a lot of strategy in this race, a lot of route choices that could have been made. So at the beginning, when David and Chip were laying out the maps, they worked really well together to strategize. And we spent a lot of time strategizing pre-race, probably more than most teams, but I think it did pay off, especially in the early legs of the race. We were able to gain some time just because we took a couple extra minutes strategizing. And I really think that the success there was due to, the close collaboration between David and Chip. So I think that worked out really well.
I really want to dig in deep to that strategy piece. But what I'm hearing is that none of you missed me.
We did. There was a lot of boring real estate talk. So I missed you, Andrea.
There was a lot of real estate.
Real estate talk. Who would have thought during a race?
Andrea, I can tell you that they did miss you, because like I was there in the at the start when they all had the maps, and they were probably the team that was sitting inside the restaurant the longest with their maps out across the table, where everybody else is out packing their stuff. But like you could definitely tell that, because I know from being around you, like there is that driven, okay, look, we got to put this aside and we got to go and do the other stuff. So I bet that was definitely missed.
I don't know. But Doug, you were there in person. You even did the rafting. Let's move on to that topic.
Yeah, I think that, obviously the race started with everybody running in the same route on the 5K down to the river, or close to the same route. I think you guys might have taken a couple adventurous ways that maybe some other teams did not take. But everybody got down to the rafting right about the same time. I think we had 7 rafts the first day getting into the water. And I mean, it was a gap of maybe 25 minutes between the first and the last raft off the water. But I got to jump in with a 12-hour, so I definitely got to experience the same flow that you guys got. How was that starting the race? Because like I had a great time, but I wasn't racing. So how was it to not have to think about anything for the first probably 3 hours of the race except move forward?
Well, I'll tell you, this team is always thinking about something. Like, even if it's a section where, there's no strategy, you just go down and get in the boat. Like, Caitlin's got something up her sleeve, or I'm thinking about something. There's always something. So let me just tell the story. Is that all right? Go for it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we were told in the rules that you get down there, you just follow the flags, and whoever gets to the boat, you get in a boat. It doesn't matter if you get separated from your team, you'll be in different boats. It doesn't matter. When you get there, you're getting in that boat. And it's, boats of 8 people. So we're running down the trail, and we're in place like 9, 10, and 11 in people. And Caitlin knows this because she's got the military mind. She's like, there's 8 people in front of us. I was like, I don't even know. I'm just running down this trail. So there's 8 people in front of us. Okay, so we're going to have to wait for the other boat, or what can we do? So the trail takes this like sharp curve around the corner. And I just like dive down the embankment, like the steep thing, and just like jump down and slide. And now I've cut off like 50 meters of running. And now I'm right behind the front group. And I was like, I'll probably have to wait for Caitlin and Chip. Chip was a little bit further back. He was nursing his knee. And Caitlin's like, no, just go ahead. You'll split them up. And I was like, okay, sure. So I take off running and I pass them. And they're like, what are you doing? You can't leave your team behind. They're like, don't worry about him. He'll have to wait for his team. I was like, it doesn't matter. I'm going to split you up. And so these are the top teams. High Point especially was super mad at me. And if you don't know, Jared, my good friend, is also my coach, is on High Point. And he was telling his team, don't worry about it. He's going to have to wait for his team. And so I just start booking it. I'm going downhill and I'm just like full, like sending my arms, waving like as fast as I can, running downhill. And they keep trying to catch me. And I was like, there's no way. I don't care if they're former Olympic athletes, whatever. They're not catching me. So I just book it all the way downhill. I get to the raft and I'm like number 4 to the raft. There was still a couple people in front of me, but not the. And then they're like, no, you have to wait for your team. And I was like, nope, you guys can split up. I'm here. And they're like, no, you have to wait for your team. Da, da, da. And they were so pissed. Rachel on that team was so mad. I didn't even know until after, but she was like flipping me off and everything. Like they were so mad. But instead, High Point decided to wait and let my first boat get filled up. And then they went in the second boat, and Chip was in their boat. And I was like, oh, this is perfect. Caitlin and I are in the first boat. Chip's in the second boat. We don't even have to stress because we know that we'll get there around the same time, and we'll negate any advantage that first 8 would have had if they had just taken off and started paddling like heck to try to put time between us. So it worked out perfectly. We got to the end and we were like a minute apart. Chip got out basically the same time. And then High Point took off and were pissed at me for about another 50 hours.
They were definitely mad at you. Because I was there right when you came running in, and I saw it. I mean, you were just like balls to the wall all the way down through the cones, like, I'm in, let's go. And then they waited. So Caitlin, you got on the first boat because they waited, but then Chip was coming down the road and they're like, what are you doing? What are you doing? And then they're like, Chip tried to sneak his way around, and they're like, no, you got to wait here. So it was fun to kind of watch that play out, because I think that was the only time in either of the races that I saw a competitive like fire already lit at that point, because everybody else was just like, yeah, we'll float down the river and it'll be fun.
And it was fun being on High Point's boat. We had such a fun time, discussions. We wanted to catch them just because it was competitive, even though it's like my team's up there and I'm trying to hold you back. We're paddling our ass off and hooting and hollering, trying to catch them, and our guy wanted to beat them. And we got into these like intellectual discussions about freaking Gaza and Russia versus Ukraine. Like, we're paddling through rapids. I'm like, yeah, but what about this and what about that? It was like these amazing intellectual discussions. So of course it's competitive, but again, it's Rachel, and it's, I mean, it's just like, it's these people that we all know. So it was a lot of fun being on the chase boat in the beginning.
And the paddle itself, first of all, I think a lot of people were really excited about this because, a lot of paddles are very boring, right? I think I just read Matt Wilson's race report, and he was talking about how like every other paddle combined didn't have as much fun as he had in this paddle. And it was fast. Like the river rose like 6,000 whatever decibel, I don't know what the term is, to like, it was flowing. So did anybody go swimming? Because I don't think I heard of anybody going swimming.
No, that would have slowed us down. We were trying to go fast. Our raft guide also wanted to win. He was like, if you swim, it's slower. Stay in the boat.
Any close calls? Like anybody like have to get,
hey. I had to like sit in the middle of the boat for a couple of the rapids because some of them were pretty squirrely. But but I did not want to fall out. That would have definitely slowed us down.
Well, some of those big ones, you hit hard and it was boom. That was a lot of fun.
There were different lines that you could take. So we made it clear to our paddle guide, and guys, you probably did the same thing. We said, we're not here for the ride. We're here to get from point A to point B without wrecking. And so they would take us just outside of the wave train, which reduced the risk a lot. And it even sped the boat up because a lot of those waves are so big, the boat comes through and stops. Yeah. And it just throws everybody forward and you get wet and then you have to start paddling. So I think the guides knew that this is a race and they were racing each other, like you said, because they have a race every year where they're going as fast as they can through the rapid. So it reduced the risk of getting thrown out.
Which I will say that like their record in this one section from point to point was 60 minutes and 2.02 seconds or something. And one of your rafts, I don't know if it was the first team or the second team, did it in 57 minutes. So like you broke their record. They were like, man, I need to go down in rafts like this all the time because everybody was just paddling their butts off the entire time.
Yeah, I think that was our guide. He won it last year, but the guides, when they do race, they have 4 people. I think it's 5 people, right? It's 1 in the back and 4 actually paddlers. But since we were racing hard and it's all the top teams, like we were hammering and we were trying to catch up with the front boat. So I think that's it. If you're in the front, you're just going along. You're just like looking over your shoulder. We had somebody we're watching. So every rapid, he's like, they're getting smaller, they're getting bigger, they're getting bigger. Like keep hammering. Like they're going to slow down right here. Like if we just hammer, we're going to make it. And yeah, he said this was the most powerful boat he's ever been on in his career. And he's been doing it for 18 years. He said, wow. we were faster than every other team that he's been on. That was pretty fun.
And having that at the beginning of a race, I mean, you guys have raced a lot. How was that, and would you do it again?
Yeah, it was awesome. I love it. I'd do whitewater rafting.
Yeah, it was fun.
It just
I
wasn't
thought it
long
was a
enough.
good way to start the race. You know, a little less stressful, but fun. Way better than flat water paddling in the middle of a race.
Yeah. So did any of the rafts pass each other? Like you were trying to catch them, but you never did. Did any of the other rafts pass?
I think there was one pass.
I just didn't realize how big that river was. I've seen it, but I've never been on it. That's really pretty cool.
But even if you passed, you were only gaining like 45 seconds at the end, right? Like you guys came in within about the same time of each other that you boarded. So you're not gaining a huge advantage by, I mean, obviously if you're just taking your time, it would have been a little bit different, but
so I guess David's the wild card here. That's a pretty sneaky move up there. I'm not sure if you needed your race mom there. That's usually my role. Maybe that's what I was missed when David.
Listen, I will say it was
teams.
Caitlin's idea, but as soon as she said it, I instantly knew what she meant, and I was like, okay, I got it.
I'm in.
But it was so funny. It was just like 3 words, and then I was like, oh, I know what I got to do.
And isn't that funny? I blame David instead of Caitlin.
It's fine.
Both of y'all. We're not that kind of team, but we are competitive, and we do like to find an edge, or Chip's always looking for a hack. And so we thought we'd talk about nav next, but it kind of plays in with strategy too. So I don't know, these questions are kind of all intertwined, but there was someone, Chris Sharp on Facebook, was saying some things he would like to know from teams on podcasts. So some of these questions are based on what he had said. But when you got your maps, I mean, I know that part of the race was all fun and games. There was no real strategy. You just go and do the boat thing. But once you got your maps, was a different race. You got your maps ahead of time, which it's been quite a while since we've gotten the maps the night before. And I'm wondering, what did you do? What was your overall, when you first saw them? What did you think? What was your overall thought process when you saw them? And also, I know that outside maps were allowed, which is also something that's not usual in a race. So, Chip, why don't you start that off?
Yeah, we did the normal thing. I'm sorry, let me rewind the clock. We knew that we had outside maps were allowed. So we bought a National Geographic map of the area, which they're readily available online. They even recommended it. And then also, we use Caltopo when we were doing virtual races. And anytime we're planning a race, like right now we're planning the Buff Betty, we're using Caltopo. So I'm super familiar with the software. Also, Strava Global Heat Map is a great way. Like all you got to do is toggle it over to mountain biking or biking, and then you can see the spots where people are biking in the area. So I basically just used the general area, and I had pre-printed before I even got there maps, both Caltopo, 124 or 125,000 scale. I can't remember. Probably 124. Same as the race maps. Yeah, they were 124. So I printed out all the area around the gorge to include all of the areas that had known trails, both hiking and mountain biking. Because I figured if you're a race director, you're trying to show off the area, and you're going to take us to some known trails. So we had that already pre-printed when we got there. And that way, we didn't do a lot of research, I wouldn't say, but at least I knew I had the baseline information that if we needed it, we could get to it. And then, of course, almost always when we first get the maps, we start looking for all the CPs. We either highlight them or label them. And the fun thing, this is the first thing we realized, David and I do things differently. Like I mark the map up like crazy. David's like, oh no, I want to keep it clean and slick. And I'm like, oh, no. So like, okay, you got your set, I got mine. So we started marking up all the CPs. That way we could see the CPs. And then we would go around and say, let's talk about the flow of the race. And you start saying, okay, which way are we going to go? You're not really marking up the map, but you're just talking about, do we go clockwise, counterclockwise? How do we avoid elevation? You don't want to go up, down. You want to stay high and then go low or those type of things. But also in this race was unique. You're allowed to go off the maps. So we look at this and go, that just is dumb. There's got to be another way. And then we'd pull up the Nat Geo map, or we'd pull out the Caltopo, or even go on your cell phone. Because at this point, we're not on lockdown. And then David and I were just like looking for any way, can we take a road around and all that? And sure enough, we found 3 or 4 ways that we could cut this course super short. And in one situation, we even had to go back to the van and print another map because I drive an office and a house and a bedroom and all of that. So we went back and we printed some more maps on Caltopo to say, and we were able to zoom in real close so that if anything went wrong, we had a lot of what do you call it, detail. And one of the hacks didn't work. We printed it out and everything, but it was raining like hell, and we decided not to take it. But we'd put a lot of thought into leveraging the fact that we were really good at mapping to say, is there a way that we can go off the maps and cut off a lot of time? And I don't think none of our hacks didn't work. Some of the hacks we chose not to do, but we never had to go out and then like turn around like we failed. But we almost got shot. But we'll get
Literally.
into it.
What? I haven't heard this.
Well,
This
in
is the
West
best
Virginia,
story.
when you show up in somebody's backyard at night with a headlamp, not a good idea.
No,
I'm just
this
saying.
is a very good reason why race directors should not allow you to go off the maps, because what you find on Cal Topo or on old Google Maps is not actually the case anymore. Like there's a house where there should be a road.
So did you get the moonshine, or did they scare you off with the gun?
They scared us off. They made it very clear. Normally people get shot, and we were very nice and cordial, and they escorted us off their property.
To the road that we were looking for.
Right, yeah.
Which was now a driveway for like
Which
a
is now
kilometer
a
and a half.
Yeah.
Andrea, I think this kind of fits into the gangster moves that Chip is famous for. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will say in the planning phase, all 3 of us worked really well together on like, I don't even remember who came up with what hacks or whatever. It was kind of like such a good collaboration. And we're going down in and out of gorge. I know you mentioned it, Chip, but I think this is important for newer racers is we were paying a lot of attention to elevation. Like, how do we save elevation? I think we did that better than most other teams on this race. And it really, it saved us a lot of time. And we kept popping up right behind High Point. Like, and they're like, what the hell are you guys doing here? Like, hey, we know how to nav. We know how to plan these routes. So we weren't as fast as them, but we sure were keeping up to them.
Well, one thing I just loved the whole race through is for some reason you and High Point kept choosing different ways to go. But just one step back, when you saw the maps and did you have an overall strategy? Once you saw where the points were, did you think about whether the course was clearable or not, or just any high level stuff? Did you decide, while you're looking at the maps?
I would go at it from the beginning. Nick said that the course was clearable. So in our mind, we're like, if nothing goes wrong, we're clearing it. And that may have been actually a crutch because we didn't spend as much time as we should have looking at that last check area that had like 17 checkpoints. If we just mathematically looked at that and said, it's going to take us 15 minutes or 20, throw a number at it per checkpoint, we probably would have planned our race so that we got there a little bit earlier, but we were thinking we're clearing no matter what. And so I feel like we messed that up a little bit. We could do better. But for again, you're talking to the fellow on air on YouTube that was asking. We should have mathematically looked at it and said, how much time do we think it's going to take for that final trek, and then managed our time to get there, because that was a very point dense environment. We couldn't do that for the entire race because there was these A-B sections, and you had no idea once you get to A, you didn't know how far B was. So you couldn't like map wheel out the race and come up with these times because you had no idea. It could be a click away. It could be 5 clicks away. You had no idea. But there was more effort that we could have put on that, and it would have been a very, very valuable. And I think it probably would have won us the race if we had cut some points earlier that we mathematically said that's going to take us 5 hours for the 1 point. Maybe we want to spend the 5 hours in the area with the 17 checkpoints and clear it. And that cost us the race.
Yeah, it really did. I mean, they gave us, the distances, the estimated distances. And in the first beginning of the race, it was all adding up. It's like, okay, this distance is about right. It's taking us this much time. Then we get to the long trek and it's like, oh, it's 32 miles. And I'm like, okay, this should take us 14 hours. We got plenty of time. 23 hours later, and it's 60 miles instead of 32 miles. That was, and because we had already started the way that we went, we couldn't change course in the middle. If we had started the other way, we would have been able to change course and cut out those 2 points and won the race easily, but we didn't. So that was kind of like, we did kind of mess that up. We probably should have started the loop in the more point dense area first, then given the ability to cut off those 2 points that were way off there, the 29 and 30.
Yeah, Andrea and I were talking during that point, and she's like, "What are they doing? They're going opposite of this." And like I was like, "Well, I think everybody was kind of like, all right, are we going to be able to clear this whole section?" And there were only, I mean, maybe 6 total teams that went for the pro points in the north. And I mean, we were watching you guys catch up with High Point going the southern route, and we were like, okay, like what's going on? Like High Point took a really long time getting back down to the river from that point where you're at right now, Andrea, that 20, maybe that's 30. You guys made up some time going down the waterfall area. It took them almost 2 hours to get down that. So
It was dangerous.
Yeah, and then
it was
dangerous. I was definitely scaring
15
Caitlin. Caitlin was definitely scared for my life. I could tell.
Well,
I'm a little reckless.
so we started going down there, and I was like, "Well, hell, we're committed now." Like, I mean, there was no going back.
Not going back.
It was not an easy trek down there.
Yeah. But like it just shows like those 2 points, they were pro points that were worth 2 each, so that's a 4-point area. And the northern pro points were worth 3 each, and there was 3 points. Of which you guys didn't get one of them, the one up on the ridge.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then you came back and got the other ones. So all things equal, when you guys got back to the final trek section, which is down where the points are right now, like there were other teams that were there way ahead of you. I mean, Royal Oak slept for 3.5 hours because, you know, they had a teammate that was really, I mean, like violently sick, and they didn't know if they were even going to be able to continue. So if you guys would have banked I didn't do the math and like how long it took you to go that southern route and cover those points.
Probably 10 hours.
Yeah. You guys would have definitely cleared all the other sections and
won
easily.
But I can tell you our mindset coming out of that TA was we weren't even thinking that it was unclearable at that point. Like hindsight's 2020, but we were thinking all in, it's clearable. So, and we knew High Point was just in front of us. We knew they weren't too far in front of us. So we didn't even consider going north to the more dense route, the more, CPs, because we hadn't even considered that we weren't going to get anything. At that point, we were moving right along. We were very close to High Point. So we were thinking it didn't matter which way we go. We're going to clear. That was our mindset. So we didn't even give it a second thought. So of course it took us forever to get down there. And then after we got down there, we realized, well, hell, this took a lot longer than we thought. Then we were kind of in trouble at that point as far as clearing. But, coming out of that TA, the mindset was we're right behind High Point. This is a clearable course. Doesn't matter which way we go. So, obviously you second guess your choices and decisions after the race. But, coming out of that TA, there wasn't a thought in our minds at that point that we were not clearing. And so I don't know. I guess we just chose to go the southern route because that's, what we had originally thought we were going to go do.
I think that's tricky too, because the last race we did, the C2C, it's hard not to carry the last race with you. Like the mistakes you made in the last race, you'll want to fix the next race. And so in C2C, we were a little bit too conservative. We really measured out how much time it would take to get to certain places. And I'll say it's not that we were too conservative. It's just things changed in the race as they went. There were different time cutoffs and things that changed. But we were too conservative in that. And then now you guys are like, oh, we're clearing it. We were told we're clearing it. There's no reason to think about strategy because we're clearing it. But at some point, you guys decided, hey, wait a minute. This is not going the direction we thought it would. And you started skipping points. But I wonder, was that... I'm kind of skipping ahead in our little agenda here, but sorry about that. Did you know where High Point was? And they were one of the only other 3 co-ed person teams, 3-person co-ed teams. I think there were maybe a handful of 3-person co-ed teams, but anyway, they were your direct competition. And did you know where they were at that time?
Yeah, I think we knew that they had gone the same way we were going. Yeah, we did. We saw them. We saw them go that direction.
And the teams coming up the hill on the mountain bikes were telling us, oh, they're about like an hour in front of you, an hour and a half in front of you.
Yeah, we knew where they were. So we were kind of chasing them essentially. So yeah, we knew where they were.
When you guys saw them up where they retired, I mean, I know I talked to you guys a little bit on the race when you're exhausted into the last leg, but how much did that buoy you knowing that, like, all right, we could do this now?
Well, so that's interesting, Doug. So we left that point and we knew that they had, dropped out of the race. And, that's when we started having the strategy discussion. And this was an interesting discussion because there was a point up on the ridge line that we were going to have to make a decision to go get. And, Chip is Chip and wants to clear no matter what. And so my rationale at that point, and we were all feeling pretty good at that point, was we skipped that point and we got first place co-ed locked up, like no problem. Like we're just about guaranteed if we skip that point. But if we go for that point, we might be late to the last trek and there's no guarantee that we get all that points. It took a very long time to convince Chip of that. Chip wanted his cake and he wanted to eat it too. He wanted to clear it. I said, Chip, we're here to win. He said, well, we need to try to clear too if we can. So Chip really wanted to get that point. Yeah. Well, around that time, I started to really start to hurt as far as just being on the trek for so long.
Uphill.
So yeah, we're going uphill. I was dying. I was just dying. And so by the time we got to that point, it was obvious I wasn't gonna make it. So there was an easy decision for Chip to say we're not gonna go get it. But prior to that, we had a long conversation about should we go for that point or not. Obviously, it turned out to be the right decision not to go for it. But it's very hard for Chip, not to clear a course. Like that first point you give away and now you're no longer clearing. Well, that would have been it, right? And so that was a significant, decision. And it's just like we said, it's hard to make those calls when you think you can clear. And then you realize, well, we may not clear, right? And so again, like Andrea said, you don't want to be too conservative and arrive at the end with time on, with extra time, and you could have got the point. So we had that conversation, but I was really sluggish at that point, and we had been on foot for a long time, and yeah. I was really starting to feel
after a really cold night too, that we really didn't talk about. That first night had to be pretty draining just from a physical standpoint because of all the rain and the temperature dropping and just.
I don't know. We were working pretty hard. I never felt that cold. I mean, I was putting my rain jacket on and off to kind of like maintain my temperature.
I felt a little cold. I mean, it was kind of a little bit miserable for me, but it wasn't terrible. I mean, we've kind of been in those conditions before, but I mean, we were moving, like we were going pretty fast, but yeah, that first night was kind of cold. And then and then by the time we got to the second night, we hadn't slept. So at that point, I think we really started feeling it. And so we decided to skip that point, and then we went in the gangster move off the map, which was a little bit scary as well. And I let the boys talk about that, but I thought we should gonna get lost.
Before you guys talk about that, I want to talk about one thing. So because Andrea talked about this earlier with the strategy piece, when you guys took that southern route, what were you estimating that your time would be for that? Because I know you talked about it took you 10, 12 hours. What did you think it was going to take you to make those decisions about let's cut that point? And then what did it take you?
So I was kind of keeping track on my watch. I do a lap every time. So I'm doing a lap for the transition, and I'm doing a lap for every leg, so I can see how long the leg has been. So I was keeping track, our first trek leg, we were right on time. So we did 7 hours, I think, for our first trek leg, which was 22 miles. So I was okay, worst case scenario, this one's supposed to be 32. If the worst case scenario, that's 14 hours total. So that's what we were thinking going into it. And then we go get those southern points, 29, 30, and then we're walking for 5 hours on railroad tracks in the hot sun, just killing our feet. My feet are all blistered on the bottom. I mean, it was just it was just felt like we're just like on a death march, right? And I remember on the train tracks, I was talking with Chip and Caitlin. I was like, hey, if we're gonna skip a point, it's probably that one up on the ridge. And they're like, no, we're not skipping, we're not skipping. I was like, okay. But I was like, it's taking us a long time. I was like, that's the one we'd probably need to skip, and we'll need to make that decision. Then we come up on High Point, and they had, I guess, forgiven me by that point, and they told me they were dropping out and everything like that, which it felt good, like that they couldn't handle the punishment, because it was real punishment we were going through. Like, their feet got destroyed, my feet were destroyed. Caitlin was in a lot of pain, but we decided to keep going, and they decided to drop out. But it kind of gave us a boost for a little bit. And the amount of emotions that I went through, from thinking that we're going to clear it, then, okay, we're definitely going to win, to, I don't even think we're going to finish this thing. Okay, we're going to finish, but we're going to be like last, to like, okay, now we can win this thing. Like,
that all happened in that one leg. And we thought it was going to be 12 to 14 hours because the foot estimate was 32 miles, but that was wrong. That was like as the crow flies. I think we covered more like 50 miles on that 56. So that was 20 more miles we didn't account for. So that really hurt us, at the end there, when we were still trying to get all those points. And now it's the middle of the night. We still haven't slept, but we need to get these points. And then, it was tough. That was definitely the low point of the race.
And we need to rewind the clock a little bit. Like Doug said, he mentioned the cold, but the wet is what I want to mention. It was like that rain. I mean, it rained for like 18 or 20 hours, right? I mean, it was like nonstop. That evening, the first night, it rained the entire night. Like, it was either sprinkling drippy or it was pouring down rain. So our feet are saturated, our body's saturated, chafing's occurring. And then you go on this like massive 20-hour death march, and no wonder High Point dropped out. I mean, the one guy had never done an adventure race before. He's super athlete, but he'd never, so we talk about foot care and all the stuff on a 20-hour death march. And, I don't know. It was one of them. All of us, I probably wanted to drop out at some point. Our feet are just destroyed. We're getting blisters, especially going on the railroad tracks. It's just, I don't know. It's not humiliating. It's just like, we're just going to walk on these railroad tracks for the next 5 hours in the sun with our feet already destroyed. It was, there's no navigation. I mean, you're following along the tracks of where we are. I mean, it was mentally tough. It was physically tough. It was exhausting. And we are the only two teams that did that, right? Like, all the other teams chose not to get those points. Maybe they're smarter than we are.
We're the only ones that went south. Yeah.
So it was rough.
I think maybe a couple of lessons learned is, whether we think it's clearable or not, we might ought to go a route that gives an out, or gives
options.
Points.
Yep.
Yeah.
You're
Before
exactly
you
right.
have an out.
Because as soon as we went south, we committed to doing the whole thing. There was no out. Yep. You're right, Andrea.
And I think, just back mathing, like, I know we've been trying to develop a role on the team to be the logistics. And like, one thing that helped us in the C2C was that we literally stopped and back mathed how much time we had, because it was kind of the same scenario where, well, no, it wasn't. We were trying to clear, and that race is often not clearable. But just having that pause to say, what have we got left in the race? And let's at least try to give an amount of time to it. So, like, when we were talking about this race, and I thought, why don't they see that all those points are down there? They got to get out of there so they can go get all the other points. But with the distance being so off, you couldn't have known. And you had those points where they were A-B points. And I'm not sure if we delved into this yet, but you had to get to the A point to get the map to the B point. And you didn't get either point unless you got the B point. But if you got the B point, you got 2 points. So that's a little different than usual. So it's harder to strategize and back math. But I think maybe if you'd said, here's 17 points at the end, even if they take us 15 minutes each, that would be, X amount of time. We need to try to leave that much time on the clock by the time we get down there. And, just if that would have been helpful, who knows? But
No,
maybe
you're
we can-
100% right. Like we have to take ownership of it. It like doesn't make sense to like blame the map people and everything like that and the estimates are wrong. It's true, but we need to take ownership of it so it can be better in the future. And we were thinking of it when we left that transition, but the mistake we made was not measuring at least some rough distances to realize, wait a minute, this is way longer than 32 miles, and maybe we need to come up with a different plan. But because we made that mistake way early, by the time we were in it, there was no way out of it.
Yeah.
But going forward, we do need to think about that for sure.
And
I
being
think that's
someone who tries to convince Chip of various different things in our relationship, the math really speaks to him. So
I think
if
this is a good lesson for like all racers, right? Like I think everybody goes into a race and they're like, I want to go get as many things as possible, right? But if you're not setting yourself up for that success to capitalize on those high saturated areas, then I mean, you could miss out on a lot of things. Like I was watching during the whole race, both in that race and the 12-hour race, where people weren't capitalizing on the 17 points that were within the park. And there were, I mean, that bottom section, there was like 7 that you could get within probably an hour of each other. So I think it's funny because people are probably watching this and thinking, what does thisAbility have to learn, right? But like, you're still out here learning these things and going through those and having to remind yourself that. And I think it's really important to tell everybody out there, you need to continue to remind yourself that. You need an Andrea on your team that will be the mom and say, look, we need to have a responsible route choice as well. So it's awesome to sit here and listen to you guys go through that because you're so experienced and you're still going through those things. So it's refreshing.
well,
And
Caitlin's very good at that too. So oftentimes it's Caitlin who's the one that says, okay, guys, we got to go because of whatever. So anyway, we do have multiple people on the team that do that well.
like you said, though, the math helps because like in this specific situation, Caitlin was going through and saying strategy wise, they gave up these 4 points. We're only giving up 3 points. We just got to get to the end and clear, and we're going to be fine. So let's give up the point. And I was like, but we still have time. Like, let's just keep clearing it. And so I wasn't getting it. It was like, I'm not going to give up a point just because I need a good reason. And so if mathematically it could have been done, I'm much more willing to give up a point. So for example, at C2C, Mark Bolliard was like, stop, we're going to pull out the maps, we're going to mathematically do this, we need to get through this gate at 10:30 if we're going to make it through this gate. And I was like, okay, I can't stand giving up points, but damn it, math is a son of a bitch because it doesn't lie, right? And so that's what I need as the ambitious navigator that just wants to hunt checkpoints. I need the math and some type of factual reason why we need to quit versus and the reason I say that, we've been in so many races where people are just worn out and tired and they want to start skipping points just to get to the finish. And like, no, we're not doing that. No, we're going to go until your legs fall off. But if it's a mathematical certainty, it's not in our best interest, then now you've sold me. So
and I think one of the things that we were going to talk about is like that cutoff, right? Like where had you guys imposed a cutoff for yourself for anything like at that TA 3-4 or like, I mean, you told me that, or you told us earlier that you really hadn't figured out point for point, like how long you thought it was going to take you to get through all the things in the park. So had you figured out how much time you needed to leave yourself for that section? And did you get to that cutoff point?
So I'm not sure if this what eventually convinced Chip to skip that point, but I had done like when we were walking up that trail and Caitlin's like, we need to skip this one. And Chip's like, I don't know about that. I had done like a rough estimate of like how long it was going to take us to get all the way back to the transition and get the last checkpoints we needed near the transition and get out of there. So I was like, okay, that's like 16 kilometers or whatever. It's probably going to take us there. We need to be out of there by like 1 o'clock, I think was our original thing. I was like, if we can get out of there at 1 o'clock, we'll get back and have enough time to clear. So I had figured that out. And I was like, if we go for that point at the top, that's going to take us at least 2 hours. And then that's going to take us past. And so we know if we finish we had this thing. I was like, if we clear all the points at the end, but we have 2 hours left on the clock, then we know Chip was right and we should have gone for that point. If we don't have 2 hours left on the clock, we know Caitlin was right and it was a good move to Chip to skip that point. So we figured out Caitlin was right mathematically.
Overwhelmingly right.
So I love that I was not the one that was, the intermediary between Caitlin and Chip, because I have been that person before.
David did a good job. And I told David, it was funny because Chip was like marching ahead and Chip was like hell bent on getting this point. And David's like looking at me like, we can't go get this point. I said, David, I know. Let's just let this play out. I was like, I know how to deal with Chip.
I kept asking, like, just let us get to the intersection and then we'll make the decision. And we got there and we look and it's just like super steep, rocky baby head road. I was like, oh, hell no. This is not like a walk in the park. This is actually, but I was just let's just not make the decision until we have to make the decision. I wasn't disagreeing. I was just like, even on the GoPro, when you guys see the video come out, I was like, here's what I think. Here's what Caitlin thinks. Caitlin's probably gonna be right, but we're gonna make the decision later. So
but I mean,
and you had the 1 o'clock time to be out of that TA. What time did you actually get out of that TA?
I think 3:30.
Yeah, like
3:30. But
3:30.
3:30. But part of the reason was like I almost like literally like went off the rails like that night. So we chose to skip that point, and then we start to go off the map in our gangster move. And we're kind of navigating. We're supposed to be on this road. It's not really a road, and I was actually scared we were going to get lost. But anyway, we kind of went through there, and then we got past the native West Virginia's house. We finally found the road. That took a while. That took longer, I think, than I thought it would take. And we finally got to the road. But once we were on the road and we knew where we were on a good path. But I was just like done. Like my feet hurt so bad. And I think it was just from being on my feet and not sleeping. Oh, and then I was like swaying on the road. Like I was literally falling asleep as we were walking. And like the guys were trying to like steady me, and we would stop. We stopped for like 10 minutes. We took a break and I got up again. And then we went for like 5 more minutes. And then like, I couldn't go. I literally couldn't go. So then finally Chip, we probably wasted 30, 40 minutes doing that, trying to keep going.
Yep.
I mean, like to me, like I was done, but I had no choice. Like I had to try to keep going, but I didn't want to stop and say, let's sleep or whatever, because I knew we had to get there. Like we had, we were trying to, win the race. Right. So finally Chip just said, okay, we're stopping and we're taking 20 minutes. And we hadn't slept at all up to this point. And he said, let's take 20 minutes. And you didn't have to tell me twice. Like I laid on the ground and I was out. And then after that 20 minutes, we got back up. Chip gave me 2 Advils. And then I was like, it took me about 10 more minutes. And I was recovered. Like after that, it was like a switch had flipped. And I went from thinking I'm not going to be able to finish this race to, okay, let's do this. Let's go. So, it just took, I think, a little bit of sleep and some Advil, and we were on our way again. And then at that point, we were starting to pick up checkpoints again. So that was a huge mental boost to me to know, oh, we've only got a few checkpoints. They're all on the way until we get to the TA.
So I have the tracker pulled up because I wanted to talk about these gangster moves, and I want to see where that was, where you were sleeping while walking. And we need to talk a little more about just the strange length that this race was, or just not typical, and the sleep strategy. But before that, you've been talking about these gangster moves, and I haven't actually shown them. And I think you just said, was this during a gangster move? Is this where you were and you took the sleep?
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
sleep was a little bit later, but
it was a little bit later. We had hit the road on the east side.
So
and the gangster part of the move, wasn't that like there was a section right along here
right
that was off the map, and that was the gangster move?
So all the other teams, when they got that point, whatever that one is there, right there, 27, they went all the way back down the railroad tracks.
Yeah.
Keep going.
They came up the creek right there.
No, they didn't. Did they come? Yeah, and they came up that creek.
They came up the creek.
Yeah, and
there was a trail just south of the creek, and they went up that trail on that ridge line that's just south there.
But we said instead of going all the way back down and all the way back up, we found this road
Pull up
cut
Royal
through.
Elks.
Um,
N cars went the opposite. No,
No, they did.
back
There
that
it
way.
is.
so
They
they
did it.
went a
Yeah.
different way as
No,
well.
well,
I was
when they
trying
went
to
down,
get
but
there.
coming back up, you can see their
Okay,
trail
so
coming
they
back
went,
up.
that's, NCARS did what you're saying. They
Yeah,
went
all the teams did.
27 and then came back down and came up. There was another team that got 27, and I think they, whichever direction they were going, was it Royal Oaks, that they came up and around this way?
That might have been the ultra runner guys, coast to coast.
Okay, coast to coast. So
Yeah,
either
they went all the
way,
way up to 60.
they either went around this way or they went up and around this way, but you kind of cut across.
Yes, and we cut through that
Okay.
road there.
And so when you were deciding to do this, like we had another question of, this was like taking a chance, right? This was an unknown versus a known.
Big chance.
And so what was your thought process there, whether you should do that or not?
It was so much shorter. It's funny, afterwards I was talking with Royal Oaks. They were like, oh no, it was like 25 minutes down the track and then like 45 minutes up the trail. Like it wasn't a big deal to go back. I looked at their tracker. It took them 4 hours to get back that way. So it was a lot longer than they thought. And for us,
Math is hard.
yeah, especially when you're without sleep. But at that point, it was the only way that we were going to clear. There was no way we were going to go back the other way. It was so much more distance.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, coast to coast went all the way up to the road.
Yeah. So now I'm showing coast to coast and you can see how much further the distance was.
Yeah.
So it was what, maybe twice as long, or would you say that's 3 times as long? So I think usually our rule of thumb
Yeah,
is
3.
a 3 times advantage. So was it? Did it pay off? Was
Oh,
that
it definitely paid off.
smooth
I mean, the
or-
road died, so that sucked, but
Yeah.
we only wasted maybe like 10 minutes trying to find the house again. And then got
Yeah,
down
but it was
there.
at night,
Yeah.
so you could see the house through the woods. But if you go to our track, zoom back in there, you'll see where we left the road, but we were down to where you could barely tell the road existed. We are just navigating through just terrain association. So you can see how we got off. Basically, there was a stream there on the map, and I was like, we just need to get down to the stream and we'll follow it up to, to the road. And so we went off the intended route, but there was nothing there. But literally it was that one little section that where you see that our blue track went off the main road, right? Right there, that little section, which was only like, maybe a kilometer, that we're bushwhacking, but it was runnable forest. It wasn't anything bad. And then we saw the lights at the house, that's the clearing that you had your cursor on. And then from the house on, it was all just driveway. But yeah, you can see we popped up in that guy's backyard and they were
So
not
that-
happy.
Yeah.
He
that
already
makes
had you on
sense.
his trail cam though.
Yeah.
Tell me what was another gangster move that paid off?
If you go to the first trek at the end of the paddle section, this is something that no one else thought. You can see, yeah, if you go back up river a little bit, nope. There, right there. So the checkpoint at the bottom of the railroad tracks on the south side of the river. No, not 4, on the other side of it. Yeah,
Right.
that one right
Number
there.
8.
Number 8.
Oh,
So
this one.
Everyone
Okay.
else hiked all the way back up and then walked down 2,000 stairs to get that checkpoint and back up. But we decided to go up the railroad tracks, bushwhack up to that point, and then take the stairs up. So we didn't have to go down and up that twice. So we saved a lot of elevation gain and at least probably 30 minutes of time on people.
Yeah, that was the move where I actually caught you guys on the stairs,
Mhm.
and you were the only ones that went that southern route. That's why I went there to catch up with you guys, because I wanted to see, was this a mistake or was this a planned gangster move? And like when you guys, I mean, those stairs sucked. Everybody that went up and down them was like, that was the worst like part of that section. You guys only had to go up them once and then go up to the waterfall or the climbing crag, and then come back down. So maybe a couple 100 feet of elevation gain, where everybody else had to go up and down probably 600 or 700 feet of elevation gain in that section. So you guys made up. I mean, you going out of that section, I think at that checkpoint 10, like High Point had at least a 30-minute, 45-minute lead on you guys. And then they were moving, but then you were coming into the transition area right as they were leaving. So like,
Yep.
And they were running. I mean, they were going hard. So it definitely paid off.
It did. And we were moving too. We were following Caitlin. I was like, man, we're just trying to keep up with Caitlin. She was moving on this section. Like,
that was my low. I was hurting climbing those stairs. I was like, I cannot keep up with these guys. Yeah.
And you pointed on 0.5. We had good nav to 0.5. A lot of teams got tripped up on 0.5. We didn't. We did that good as a team. Like, we stopped and we figured it out. And there was like a path that kind of looked like it should be the path that followed the power lines. And we're like, no, it's not going the right way. A lot of people got tripped up there, but we nailed that one.
Yep.
Yeah, I thought your nav was great, but I probably messaged Doug right around here because I'm like, what are they doing? They're going the totally wrong direction. I just wasn't seeing the reasoning, because when you went up to this point so that you didn't have to basically make that mountain back, you did add quite a bit of distance. I mean, you had to double back here, and no other team had to do that, but it still saved you time and based on the elevation. But the only other place I want to point out that I thought was pretty brilliant here at home watching the dots was when you guys jumped on this road instead of taking this red trail. This was on the bike section. And I think High Point was somewhere around in here. And you popped out of this trail system and came down the road, and you guys were kind of, I was just waiting. I just couldn't wait to see who and how things would go. And you caught up with them right down here at this, where is it? 0.17.
Yeah, that's further down the river by the waterfall.
Did you guys see them there?
Well,
yeah, we were 4 minutes behind them at that waterfall. I was watching my watch. 4 minutes.
That means that section you guys made up 25 minutes, because I would say that you guys probably left the TA about 25 minutes after them. Maybe 30. And so and it's funny because a lot of the teams at short course, they took that road because they didn't get all of the other points. Like, they didn't go out to get that B point that's the farthest one kind of northeast there. And so they short coursed and took the road, but that road, you were bombing down that, right? Like, it was fast. And even though it was raining, you were probably still able to hold it pretty good, right?
And they're faster bikers than us, like, for sure. And we made up that much time on them. Felt good about that, for sure.
So one more nitty gritty question. Like, Doug shared a video that he took of Chip at a TA, and Chip said, well, we're planning this gangster move at CP 18, and you were going to decide when you got there whether you should take it or not. And
it keeps going down a little bit.
All the way down to the bottom of the map. There you go.
Yeah, that very bottom point.
Here.
Zoom in on that. Zoom in on that.
What happened? What made you decide not to take the gangster move, and what was it going to be?
Scroll up just a little bit. Just if you head south from 18.
Go south a little bit.
Yeah, put 18 in the middle of the screen.
There you go.
Yeah. Okay. So right as you head south from 18, right as the river turns west, we were going to try to bushwhack up that mountain to the road, cutting off tons of kilometers.
Yeah.
So if you scroll in a little bit right there south of 18, you can probably see it on this map that there was power lines cleared. Okay. Yep. So drag 18 back to the middle of the screen and let it. There you go. Okay. You can almost see it. There's a little white road going up in that reentrant back up to the road just south of 18, connecting next to the river to the east. And so we saw that on the sat photo and everything, and we were actually gonna, right there. That's it. If we could have pulled that off, we would have cut off dozens of kilometers to the left and would have worked our way back up north, and that would have been amazing.
Does that road connect?
Yeah, why didn't you do it?
It was pouring down rain, and after the experience that we had, knowing that the steepness of the hills and the vegetation was so thick, we were, and we, on the way to 18, we could also see the other teams coming back from it. We knew nobody else took that road, or not a road. I'm sorry. It was bushwacky power lines. And earlier we had been on power lines on the trek and realized the power lines, even though it's clear, it's briars, it's thick, it's not a road. And that was just way too steep. So I think we made the right decision to not even investigate and just save the time and move on. You can see how tight the topo lines are. It would have been really, really, really steep. Probably would have taken us an hour and a half, 2 hours just to get up to the top of that. But
Yeah.
if we could have pulled that off, that would have been pretty epic.
Yeah. All right. Maybe last nav question. Was there any challenging points that you want to point out? Anything you want to look at here?
I mean, on the bike ride, we didn't make any nav errors until the bike ride.
Yeah, until we were like almost 50 hours in and sleep deprived. And then we, you know, we only had 2 nav errors basically the entire time. Yeah, that one, which was dumb because I was like, the terrain's not matching up. The terrain's not matching up.
Yeah.
It's not like, and we're still like looking for the point. And it's like, we should have just been like, this is not the right terrain. We're out of here. But, you know, we're 50 hours in with 20 minutes of sleep. So it's hard to make those
Rushing.
calls.
I
Yeah.
also noticed that this point, and I asked Chip about this, but this point you got credit for, but you didn't go anywhere.
That's an A. We didn't need it. We knew where the B was.
Once you got the B, it didn't matter. Like if you accidentally found B, you didn't have to go to letter A.
Yeah. So some
sometimes
people were
luck
using
plays a little
Google.
bit.
Some people before the race Googled the points that had like names, like the clues had names like Swinging Bridge and Island in the Sky.
Oh,
We forgot to do that, but then like Island in the Sky, I was like, oh, we should have Googled that. And then I'm walking by and I see this trail. The trail name says Island in the Sky. I was like, it must be there. And we had seen High Point come out of there as well. We're like, let's try it. Let's just go. Let's not even get the A point. Let's just go there. And sure enough, we found it there. So there was a couple that were like that you could get just using some investigation
that's
ahead of time.
slick. Yeah.
I heard other teams did that same thing. Like there was a couple where the name just matched up with, like there's a park map that has that. Like so.
And the only other point that I heard about that from the online chatter was 13B. A lot of folks had some difficulty.
Yes.
On.
That one was misplaced.
Yeah.
But you guys found it?
Yeah, because a team told us.
Yeah, a team told us.
So
coast to coast, actually. Shout out to those ultra marathon runners.
Awesome. I mean, sometimes luck plays a part. I think that's pretty lucky that you came across a team that
well, so here's the thing. It goes back to my gangster move in the beginning where I ran in front of Team High Point and got in the raft. If I hadn't done that, I wouldn't have been in the raft with Coast to Coast. We wouldn't have created a relationship and been friends, and then wouldn't have told us where to find that checkpoint. So, you know?
So I guess it matters who you want to be friends with.
You know, I guess. I mean, who you end up talking to, I mean, it helps sometimes, like, to be friendly to them.
Yeah,
we shared the trail magic. Everybody else that we passed, we said,
we also said,
not in the rancher and it's on the other side. It's on the trail. Just keep riding around. So the checkpoint was physically misplaced, and if you didn't know it, you know, you would have attacked it from the south, and you would have wandered around for an hour or two. I mean, it wasn't in there. It was up on the trail. So that was just whoever placed that point just screwed that up, and it could have really tied up some teams. So each team that we crossed exiting,
race karma is real though, right? I mean, you have to, we're all out there together. And if you're the asshole that doesn't give like that to somebody else after you just struggled with it, like, I don't know. Because I've had that, in race, I think we all have, where you're like, hey, did you guys find it? And they're like, but race karma is real.
Well, it's one thing if it's where it's supposed to be. Another thing if it's misplaced. I feel more of an obligation to say, hey, it's misplaced. Here's where it is. But if it was exactly where it's supposed to be, I wouldn't feel the need to tell people, right? I mean, let people do their own race. I don't want people telling me how to find checkpoints. We're out there for the strategy and the puzzle. I want to solve it. I want to do my own race. So Yeah, but that one was legitimately misplaced. We verified it, and then therefore we shared it with everybody. Yeah.
Well, speaking of strategy, I think when we talked about the cutoffs, and you also talked a little bit about like what you might change if you would have not just thought that it was clearable, and the prioritizing of that last section. I mean, when I saw you guys coming into that last section, first of all, I was amazed. Like, I sent the videos to Andrew because you guys were running like you had just started a race. You were running uphill, and I was in a like Bobcat, and I'm like, I can't even keep up with you guys. So like, you guys were just crushing it at that point. How did you feel about that, getting into that section and like where you were in the race?
I was like, my feet were hurting so bad. Like Chip was so nice. He popped my blisters at the end. He knows. And I was like I was so defeated that I was thinking like everyone else has probably already cleared this because they were so far ahead of us. We knew they had hours and hours on us. So when we got there and it was like a foot race, I was like, there's no way. They had such an advantage. They should have cleared this all and just be chilling, waiting for food. And when I found out it was a foot race, I don't know, the adrenaline just kicked in and I was like, F it, like I don't care. My feet hurt. I might as well just keep running. And Caitlin took off, and Chip was like, "We're running!" And he was so happy.
Your transition was like 35 seconds. It was so incredibly fast.
I think we were just super happy to get there. Like after the night we had, when I was going through a super low, I think we were just really happy to be there. And then, I mean, we were excited because we kind of knew where we stood at that point. We had made it through the night. We still had hours, at that section. So we were just like, I think the adrenaline was just pumping. We knew we only had a few hours left and we were just going to, put it all on the line, to try to get as many points as we could. So I think we were excited. We kind of knew where we stood and it was like, let's do this. We got 3 hours. Let's get as many as we can.
Did you guys see Coast to Coast or Royal Elks or NCARs like at the end at all?
We saw Royal Elks.
Royal Elks.
At checkpoint 33.
Actually, they helped us find that checkpoints because the clue was bridge and we were sitting right on the bridge and we had already been over there for like 5 minutes looking around for it. And then they roll up and we're like, yeah, we can't find it. It's supposed to be right here. And then they asked us, well, where did the trail come out? Because they didn't take the trail, they had taken the road. And so they went around the corner to where the trail come out and I noticed they hadn't come back. And so I went over there and for whatever reason, the checkpoint was over there, kind of hidden off to the side of the trail. I don't know if we would have ever found that, just the way the clue was said the bridge. So anyway, they helped us find that. But that's
they took a nap right before then, so they were rested.
And also,
yeah, they had gone to the TA and then they had to go back and get that. Well, they helped us find that one, and so we knew they were close to us. So I think we were pretty pumped to get to the TA and just start racking up the points on that last track.
Yeah, that point was. I mean, I don't want to be critical too much of the race director and everything, but that to be in the wrong place and for that to be a mandatory point and the bridge to get there was actually closed. And it's like you put a waypoint and you put a mandatory point, you're trying to force people to go this way. And then the bridge is literally closed because it's unsafe. Now, we don't care. So we just went over that bridge. But a lot of teams like turned around and went the long way. But like, we were like, whatever, we're here, we're going over it. But like, the race director really should have vetted that out and made sure that that was a safe path and that checkpoint was in the correct place, especially since it was a mandatory checkpoint. I feel like that was kind of on them. But I mean, we navigated it fine, but I think that was definitely on them.
I agree. So the other thing that I think we did right, but we could have done better. Everybody's feet was destroyed after the rain, but then how do you fix your feet coming out of the rain? And how do you fix your sleep coming out of, 30 hours into the race? I look at it like we took 20 minutes, but we probably should have taken it earlier and we probably should have slept a little longer because we allowed ourselves to slow down a lot before we realized we needed to sleep. And also when you sleep, you let your feet air out. And all of a sudden, all of the maceration, the wetness that's causing the raisins, if you sleep, you let your feet air out. And I think that we were moving really fast after we slept. Like our speed increased exponentially, and we got to the end and we were able to run again. Meanwhile, when we were earlier, when our feet were macerated, we were scared to go uphill and downhill because you're shearing the skin off the bottom of your feet. So I look back thinking, man, if we could have just taken a little extra time, maybe on the railroad tracks as we were going along, just let our feet air out, and we would have been even faster.
I think checkpoint 26, where we had the canopy there, like the picnic spot.
Yep.
Like that probably would have been the spot to sleep right there.
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's
like
funny
25
because,
to 30 minutes.
Yeah, you guys want to, you guys are pushing yourself really, really hard, right? Like I'm not at that level. So when I want to sleep, I just stop and take a 20-minute nap and I'm fine because it's just 20 minutes and I don't care. And there goes a point that I don't care about. But for you guys, you have to prioritize that, but you have to balance. Do you do it too early? Did you do it too late? But it's again, we're in this situation where you guys are so experienced and have done all these races and you're still learning, right? It should show people out there that you are constantly learning in this sport. And it's all trial and error, right? Like you go until you can't, and then you figure out what you need to fix to get past that point again. So like, that's all. I love hearing stuff like that because I think it's, for those that are listening at home, that's so refreshing to hear that we're not the only ones that are going through those things.
Yep. So let me do a correction on what you just said. And this is learning based on this race. I think where we failed is that we went until we can't. And that's where we failed. What we didn't recognize the fact that if we would have went until we started slowing down and then took the sleep, both to let our feet air out, but also to get the sleep, I think our speed would have increased rapidly. So during the railroad tracks, that's where the team started spreading out, where it was like, we're moving slow, it's hot, it sucks. If we would have slept there, because we recognized that the team was slowing down, not that we couldn't go any further, we would have been better off by taking a sleep there and then maybe a little longer. I don't think we would have had the meltdown that we had because all of us were hurting. By the time we got past 27 and up into the bush at night, we were all just struggling so hard. So I don't know. I mean, again, hindsight's 20/20.
It was so hard to stop at that point because we knew High Point was right in front of us because we had teams kind of past us, and we'd ask them, did you see High Point? They're like, yeah, we saw them. They're probably like an hour and a half ahead of you guys. So it's like it's so hard to stop when your competition that you've been pushing so hard for, over the last 36 hours or so is right in front of you.
Well, and I'll tell you,
so
they're probably saying the same thing though, because
I know the same thing.
They stopped at that point and slept for an hour to see if they could go on after that.
Yeah, so maybe they pushed themselves beyond the point of no return too. But it's so hard. And then with a 48-hour race, it's tough because, in a 72-hour plus race, you're sleeping the second night. You're sleeping the second night no matter what team you are. 2 hours at least. But it's like in a 48-hour race, 50-hour race, it's like, do you sleep the second night? Like you try to. Our mentality, I think, because we were so close to High Point, was we're going to push through. And we had cutoffs we had to meet. We wanted to be at that TA at 1. So it was like, we can't stop and sleep if we're going to make the TA at 1, but Chip finally recognized that we had no choice. Like I was barely moving. It's like, we're going to have to sleep, like, or we're not going to finish the race. So we got to the point where we had to stop or I wasn't going to be able to keep going. And he's exactly right. As soon as we stopped, and then got back going, we were faster, and so it takes some discipline, some really tough discipline to recognize, as soon as you start slowing or even before that point, you need to be disciplined enough to stop and recognize that if you don't stop at that point, it's going to slow you down even further on the back half of the race. But with a 50-hour race, it's a tough distance to kind of figure the sleep out.
Yep. I think that's another way we can enhance the role of whoever's doing logistics, or even a couple of people just kind of keeping track of how long it's taking for certain distances. Like if you could recognize, hey guys, we just did a kilometer and it took us half an hour when you think, oh, it would normally take us 10 minutes, or maybe that's extreme, but maybe we could use that in races to come. And I think
well, we could. I mean, Dave recognized that. Dave was like, oh yeah, we're going like, I don't know. Oh, it was like, yeah, 2 miles an hour. At one point we were moving 2 miles an hour, and Dave said that. But none of us thought maybe we should stop and rest.
Yeah.
And I want to defend myself a little bit. I did tell Chip, I was like, man, I think we need to stop. I'm concerned about Caitlin. You know, like I was seeing it, but you know.
Well,
it's so hard to stop
too,
though, because it's like you got to keep moving because you're already moving slow.
And you're the new guy on the team, right? Like, you don't want to be like, you guys need to stop. I see it. Listen to me. I know.
Yeah, that's
I'm
the other
talking
thing.
about.
It would have been hard for Dave.
Exactly. I don't want to be like, hey man, I need a nap. Like I'm the new guy on the team. Like.
But on the other hand, but again, Dave, you fit in perfectly. It's a math equation. It's like if we stop now, we'll be able to increase our speed by 10 or 20%. Right? You mentioned that. Like if we just went 5% more, 10% more, what would happen? So if we mathematically look at it and say a 20-minute sleep increases our speed 10% over the next 8 hours, 12 hours, it's going to pay for itself. So it's like you got to invest money to get the return on that investment over time with compounding interest, Caitlin.
Really? Oh, here we go. We're not.
There we go.
I speak math. I speak spreadsheets.
Oh my God!
And I know how to communicate with Chip now. Like I know, I got it.
You got it.
And I also have 4 kids and a lot of emotions going on, so I understand how to communicate with the emotions too. So I got it.
If you would have wanted to put me to sleep, just have Chip talk about compounding interest, and then I would be asleep in a heartbeat.
There you go. Oh, so funny. Well, I think we've gotten through most all of our questions, and we've got some things we're going to move forward with to do better in Alaska, which I'm super excited for. But we've talked about a lot of the struggles. I just want to maybe close by hearing your highs. What was your high of the race, David?
Man, it's so crazy. It was so emotional. Like to say like what the high of the race was is kind of hard for me. Just like the overall, for me, it's going to sound weird. I know I got to talk to my therapist about this, but like the suffering was really the high point for me. To be like, we could go through so much suffering and come out as such a strong team at the end and finish so strong was just so encouraging to me. Like just for me, like personally, that I know I can go through this because I don't have that long, 5-day race experience that I'm going to be jumping into. But so like I could go through something so hard, but also how the whole team is able to go through something so hard and remain positive all the way to the very end that we're running, trying to win this thing was just like a super high for me, I think.
So cool. What about you, Caitlin?
I thought the rafting was really fun. That was a high point. And the first trek, I mean, we killed it. Like we were doing really well on the first trek. So I thought that was a high point. Obviously the low point was the second night, and trying to recover from there and then getting into the TA at 3 a.m. and having to hustle out. Like that was tough, but I really enjoyed biking kind of at dawn and coming into that last TA and just all 3 of us just dropping the bikes and like going and just knowing, hey, we got this. Let we can go get as many points as we can. We got like 3 hours or whatever. I think we had 3 hours, 2 to 3 hours. So that was a high for me, that last TA, just like dropping bikes and just like jetting out of there like no tomorrow. I really enjoyed that part of it.
That's awesome. That reminds me though that when I saw the video of you guys, I thought you should have dropped some more stuff because your packs looked a little heavy. Like you only got 3 hours. Take something out of there.
Maybe we should have done that. Yeah, you're right. We didn't even think about it. We were like points. We gotta go.
It must have been a great feeling. Yeah, I really wished I was there right about then. What about you, Chip? What was the high?
Well, I'll start with the low. The low was climbing those stairs, and Doug captured it all on film. And I even told the team, I was like, "Guys, this is it. This is my low for the race. I am just holding on. My legs were torched. I had a knee injury leading into the race, so I hadn't been running as much. And that downhill run killed my quads. The rafting hurt my calf, and I was running trying to keep up with them. And I mean, I was redlining. And I was like, I just don't know how much longer I can do this. And and they were like, "We got plenty of time. You can have another low. This doesn't have to be the one." So I don't know, but I'd say after we got on the bikes, I was like back into chip mode, and everything was fine. But so I guess my high, like they said, that last trek, I think everybody was we just said whatever we have left, we are throwing it in. We're going. It doesn't matter about blisters. We're going. We're just going to knock this out. And just running around as fast as possible. Although we made some errors, because that's what happens when you have high heart rate and everybody's just frantic, just trying to go as fast as you can. But then Doug with the drone following us in, like we finished our last checkpoint. We just have to run it in. Teams all together are all smiling. We think we may have won this, or at least we won the co-ed division. It was a lot of fun because we worked really, really hard to get to that point. And then to know that we just got to make it right over there, and you got the drones and you got the people out there. I don't know that at that level, you've been going for whatever 40, 49 hours. Your emotions are higher and everything's better. The colors are more vibrant. Like everything is better. And so then you run into the finish line. I don't know. For me, that was a big high of this race.
So I think it's hilarious that I asked you guys your highs, and all three of you talked about your lows too. I mean, it does kind of go to show that you really can't have one extreme without the other almost,
Right.
So Doug, I really appreciated that you were at this race. You did a really great job providing live footage and some dot watching commentary, and answered my messages every time. I was like, are you up? Like, what's happening? And I think at one point you said, I'm going to bed now. Like, pretty much, you're not going to hear from me. But I really appreciated that.
That was night 2. You were like, hey, what is going on? I was like, look, I got to go get like 3 hours of sleep.
Yeah.
Well, it was great for me. Like, obviously I love AR dot watch. I love telling people stories, but it's even better when I know the people and I feel like we are all family. And so like getting out there and be able to see you guys and like give that to you, Andrea, too, like knowing, because I was talking to you and then I'm talking to them, and like it was just awesome for me to see, and to always to see the heart that you guys race with. Like, it's so inspiring to see every time that we go out there, because like you guys are so approachable at races. Everybody loves you. And it's so fun. And I think you guys were the last team on the course. So that's why I had the drone up, and like I got to get that footage out because it's a really cool like video. You guys kind of waving at me and then following you in on that last. It was a picturesque, finish for you guys, and it was awesome to see you guys push and obviously see you out there. Like, my favorite picture that I took from this was the one of you three on the stairs at different levels. Andrea, I just sent it to you in case you hadn't seen that one. But it was just great to see you guys out there, and thanks for letting me be a part of your awesome race ramble. I'll always be in your corner, and hopefully tracking more races.
Thanks, Doug. And to the team, congratulations. You did get that first place co-ed 3-4 person elite division win. That's awesome. So cool. As far as the overall, I think you guys came in 4th, but man, was it close. I mean, seconds between some of those teams. So,
Yep.
But really, really
you made me do math. I had to do math. And then
I really am so content with the race that we ran, despite whatever little hiccups we had. Like, I know there's no other team that put more effort into that race than we did. I mean, we put out the most effort possible in that race.
And isn't that a great feeling? Like, you hardly left any time on the clock. You filled up the whole time. I know you gave it your all the whole time. I was never worried about that.
We have time for one more, by the way.
It was a classic Chip Dodd finish.
We had 15 minutes on the clock. If Kate would have let me, I would have gone for one more.
There's no way, Chip.
She would have just grabbed your pack and sat you down.
They just we're taking the maps, Chip. Just follow.
That was a funny ending. That really was. I mean, Caitlin to the rescue again.
But we're gonna talk about this. Like, no, she's like, no, Chip, we're not. No.
Someone had to take charge that had some sense, right?
And this is a great ending to this chat too, because like this is the things that people don't hear and see, right? That Chip wanted to go after one more. Kayla's like, no, we're just not doing it.
We were not where Chip thought we were. At the
That's
end
true.
When he made
That's true. Yeah.
We were not where we
Oh,
thought
all
we were.
came
And
together.
Again, Caitlin was right. I'll admit it.
I mean, it comes down to like, I mean, like we could have won it if we had got the one that we missed up there, that we wasted the time. Like if we had gone straight to that one, then we would have had time to get the other one and come down. We could have won it. But like, I mean, that's how close the margins were. But like at that end, to be that tired, and then Caitlin's like, we need to make this call right now. And she makes the call, and she was right. Like, because we were further than we needed, and we had to run it in and everything like that. Like it just, yeah, it just shows the value of the team and having good teammates that you can listen to in those times when you might not be thinking right.
Yeah, I mean, David's spot on, like, you know, kind of to sum it up. And like he said, throughout the race, there was times where each one of us made a decision that was the right decision. You know, like each one of us gave the inputs that's, you know, the other teammates needed to hear. So I thought it truly was a team effort to finish like we did.
Awesome. It just makes me really excited for races to come. And thanks for listening, everybody out there in the world, and have a good race, the next race you have. Thanks for listening.
We hope you enjoyed this podcast. Please take a moment to leave a rating and a comment.
If you have a question for the next mailbag segment, call 757-354-4795 and leave us a voicemail or a text with your name, city you are calling from, and your question.
To find additional content, including the video versions of these discussions, you can search for thisAbility Racing on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram.
We hope this podcast inspired you to focus on your abilities and plan your next adventure.
See you on the trail.